Good morning or evening or afternoon to all my fellow voice lovers and nerds, because that's what I am. I just love nerding out about this stuff. And today is no different. My guest today is Jeremy Ryan Mossman of Body Based Voice. He has got the coolest approach to teaching I've ever heard. It's an inside out, play based. There's a lot more to it. I'm simplifying, but I cannot wait to talk more with him. In fact, I'm going to bring him on right now and we'll talk more. Jeremy, hello.
Hi. Hi, Jill.
I hi. I love this. And I already commented on your sweater, but I'm going to do it again because it still makes me happy. So thank you for being you in this world. Woo.
Always, always. We need
So
more
good.
color.
We need more color.
Mhm.
There are so many questions from me to you today that I need to compose myself because I get so excited about body-based ideology, and
Mhm.
especially when you drop words like somatic and trauma and play, I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yes, let's do it." But what I wanna know from you first is the question I ask everybody first is why voice? What was it about voice that pulled you and that was like, "I need to dedicate my life to that?"
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a
Oh,
choice. Like it's one of those
cool.
things, like I started singing by accident. It was, you know,
Oh.
long story short, I got ahead before high school and there was some sort of weird thing in Ontario and I needed to take an extra credit that was not grade 9 but grade 10, and I was
Ah.
already taking band and I thought, well, voice sounds really easy, so I'll have an easy grade 9 and add voice in there. And that's how I started singing. But um my mother always
Love it.
says, like, I was in the grocery store in the cart just singing all the songs at the top of my lungs as a child. So it's one of those things
Ooh,
where it's like,
ooh.
I didn't choose this. This chose me, and I'm not upset about it.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you remember singing in the cart? And, like, did you have favorite artists? No, it was just so natural to you.
Mhm, mhm.
I believe it chooses us too. I'm glad you said that. It just does. Like, yeah, and it's usually when we're young and maybe we forget and
Mhm,
then it finds us again. So that's
mhm.
that's I love that you said, "I signed up for voice because I thought it was gonna be easy." Was it easy?
Yeah, 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 and then, like, just it's one of those things where, like, following the flow that presents
Yeah,
itself, just like I didn't choose these things, but
yeah.
at some point someone's like, "Oh, there's auditions for a local show." And I was like, "Oh, I should do that." And I did that and I did the show. And then in the summer there was another show and somebody in the audience of that show said there's this other show that's like this professional show with some like of the like best opera talent in Canada to do this tour of Benjamin Britten's Noah's Flood. That's
Oh
going to
my god.
go to a few different places in Canada and then finish in San Francisco. And I was just like, okay, I'll go to that audition. And I
Sure.
think I wore a suit. Like I didn't know what to do, and I was just
Excellent.
like, I wore my best, fanciest clothes and showed up and got cast as like the Sem, the youngest son of Noah, who had the biggest part in all of the like sons and their wives, and just I didn't know what I was doing. I was just showing
Yeah.
up, and
Love it.
something was motivating me to keep going.
Isn't that life is fun. The flow of life, when you get in it, it is a trip. It is so much fun,
Yeah.
and I love that you're a fellow Canadian. That makes me happy. Thank you for that.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, so I'm dying to get into this, and I know my audience is really, really intrigued by the body-based voice. So our
Mhm,
first thought is, obviously, our voice is inside our body, that makes sense, but a lot of teaching, traditional teaching is mind-based metaphors,
mhm,
visualizations,
mhm,
very head-centric. So I want you
mhm.
to talk to me about the word I was trying to say instead of voice was body-based voice. What is that?
I think it encompasses what you're talking about, visualization, metaphor. One of the
Mhm.
folks that both Chris Kelly and I follow and appreciate, he's friends with him, is Nick Winkelman, who's a sports coach who wrote the book, The
Ooh.
Language of Coaching, who talks about how effective an analogous cue is. When he talks about
Mm,
running, he
mhm.
talks about how you can give a cue to the body, like dart the knees forward, or a cue to the body in the environment, an external cue that would be called, as opposed to an internal cue. External
Mhm.
cue would be like push off the ground, versus an analogous cue or a metaphor. There's a rattlesnake behind you about to bite you. Beat the bite. I
Ooh.
don't run. I could run with
I could run
that
with that.
motivation. And so analogies and metaphors are really motivating for the body to shift, to find
Right.
something that you can't necessarily muscle from your mind into your matter. So I think there is
Mm,
a huge validity in using imagery and visualization. But what I think I mean by body-based voice is understanding and appreciating what the body is in real life, which is not the anatomical model. It is not what biomechanics talk about. It is your
mm,
experience of life. And your
right.
experiences don't necessarily align to the feeling of being pulleys and levers,
Interesting.
which is what we've inherited, and it doesn't
Mhm.
align with being in parts and talking about muscles. One of
Right.
the my teachers, embryologist and phenomenologist Jaap van der Wal in the Netherlands, says beautiful
Mhm.
things like the body that you have has muscles, the body that you are has movements,
Ooh,
the body that you have has brains, the body that you are has thoughts. And it's in this ability to hold subjective and objective together that I think we can really understand what body-based is all about, because my
wow.
experience of life has nothing to do with muscles and it has nothing to do
Right.
with brains. Not that I don't
No,
have them. Well,
of
brains
course.
part, we'll find out.
You have
But
lots.
I think I have some still. But that my experience is really worth something. And so how do I
Mm.
talk to a client to nurture an experience of singing so that their
Mhm.
experience of singing changes in the direction of their goals and in the direction of efficiency? How do we do both at
Mm.
the same time without bringing them into conceptualization and extracting thoughts and concepts into movement? Because there are different ways of learning and of knowing. And
Mhm.
our intellect
Mm.
has a way of knowing and understanding that's linear and logical. And we like that because it makes sense and it's
Yes.
comforting. The
Yes.
body is not linear and is
Ooh.
not logical and doesn't learn in
Mhm.
linear or logical ways. It learns through different experiences that
Right.
surround an intention. And so, how do we play around the intention, building new experiences
Right.
so that we are prioritizing sensory flow of information versus intellectual flow of information, so that this complex adaptive system, which is what it
Mhm.
is, which is not the
Mhm.
same as anatomy and biomechanics that compare the body
Oh,
to a machine, so
right.
that this complex adaptive system can self-organize on its own. It can learn from the varied experiences that you bring
Mhm.
into any intention, and it knows how to create the best, most efficient path given the information that it has. So I find my
Right.
job is to help a singer develop more sensory flow so that their body, their subconsciousness, their mind can do
Mhm.
that work behind the scenes so that they're not caught up in
Oh.
here going like, oh, I just have to lift my soft pal a little bit more, make sure I take that belly breath, and
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
muscling our mind into our matter while beat the bite. Our matter knows what to do with the right
Right.
motivation and with enough experiences. And so it's a combination, body-based voice, what the body really is in real life and how it
Yeah.
learns. And it's
Yeah.
different than what we've inherited. And I always
Interesting.
say you could read all the voice books in the world and not be a better singer for it. You could understand everything there is to know about voice and not
It's
be
up
able to
here.
sing.
Yes. Yes. I agree 100% with that because we do need to integrate that knowledge. What did they say? There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. No, there's some kind of saying being knowing it and knowing it.
That's
And
right.
that's not
That's
even the
right.
word, right? So,
But
wow,
one of the
okay.
principles of nonlinear pedagogy is that your client hasn't learned until the behavior has changed. So
Oh, I love
you can
that.
ask them, how are you going to belt that note? And they can say, oh,
Mhm.
I'm going to do this with my tongue. I'm going to do this with my breath. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do the other thing. But unless their body actually does it, who cares how much they know? It's not about the intellectual
Wow.
understanding. It's
Wow.
about the body knowing how to motivate the movements based on the intention that you have in your inner ear.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I was gonna save this to the end, but I wanna go right into that example that you just shared. What is missing in the I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna use my tongue, and I'm gonna use my breath. What is missing to have the execution be 100%, "Yes, it's working"? Like, what is missing from the body-based? view.
Can you rephrase that? What do you mean?
Yeah. So if you're teaching someone and they're
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm going to use my breath, I'm going to put my tongue here, but it's not coming out right. In that
Mm.
scenario, what do you think as the body-based voice coach? What is missing in the teaching aspect? What is missing in the body experience that
Yeah.
it's not working?
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Well, exploration for one. The body
Yeah.
doesn't learn by being programmed. It doesn't learn by
Mhm.
saying your tongue goes here and your breath does this. It's not that way. It's not
Yeah.
two-dimensional. It's experiential. And so I
Yeah.
like to, in many occasions, not every occasion, there's lots of
Mhm.
roads in, but I like to work with the quality of sound. And
Yeah.
I break down the voice qualities, all the qualities. I think, opera, belting, whether you're singing jazz or you're singing, pop music, different styles of pop and contemporary music, that we can boil that down to essentially four primary colors. Just like
Mm.
we have three primary colors that we mix together to create all the other colors that we see,
Mhm.
and we can trust that, there are
Yep.
combinations that emerge new things. And that is um, the part of what complex adaptive systems do is emergent properties come out and we become more than the sum of our parts. And that is so important. So if
Yes.
we think about the voice, that it can be very bright, and that has variations, right? It can be bright and nasal,
Mhm.
bright and not nasal, bright
Mhm.
in
I
the
like it.
front, bright in the back. You can really expand this topic out to make it much more interesting. But
Mhm.
essentially, we've got bright sounds, we've got dark sounds, we've got breathy sounds, and we've got not breathy sounds. And all of
Mhm.
them have variations and gradations, and all of them can be combined to create more colors, just like how we combine red and blue and create purple, which is neither
Love that.
red nor blue. It is not
Mhm.
just the sum of those component parts. It's something brand new that is
Mhm.
now its own thing. And so we want to encourage the body to find those pathways where it just comes through us instead of being muscled into us. And so I
Nice.
do talk about tongue positioning. I do talk about
Sure.
these things, but not in any kind of fixed way. If we're
Interesting.
talking about what I think is probably the best idea for the tongue, since we're talking about that, then
Mhm.
we create
Mhm.
some variations and we create other possibilities, and we play with the right, and we play with the left, and we play with other ideas in that neighborhood, because it's
Nice.
through the variations around the intention that all that necessary sensory data
Yeah.
can come together and self-organize into something new. So it's not
Oh.
enough. It's not enough just to put the tongue somewhere that will get an effect. But you
Mhm.
know what it's
Mhm.
like, where it's like, oh, great, we figured it out. Next week, we're doing the same thing. It didn't stick.
Yeah.
And so this is the big difference, is we're talking
Mhm.
about sticky learning, because
Yeah.
this approach is in alignment with how the body learns experientially.
Mhm.
And the body, any complex adaptive system, fails before it succeeds, and it fails a lot. And then it
Mm.
finds
Mhm.
lasting success. And so trial and error is a big part of the process.
I was
Laughing it
gonna
off when
say,
it didn't work
do
is
it.
a big part of the process, right? Just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing how it goes is a big part of the
Yeah.
process,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
evaluate how the body is learning from the experiences you're bringing into it.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
really, really interesting and really creative, and also really makes a voice lesson experience a partnership between
Yeah.
clients and facilitator of learning, and their feelings and thoughts and reflections, and what you hear and what you think is
Mhm.
possible in this moment for them. It's really
Mhm.
an improv session where you're just
Right?
batting back and forth, and their sounds and their feelings and your ears, they're just in dialogue. And it's neat. It's neat, and you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
No, you
But
don't.
to quote Neil Thies, who wrote Notes on Complexity, with any complex adaptive system, you don't know what's going to happen, but you know something will.
Yes. Well said. Yes, something will happen, and we're just gonna get
And
curious about it. Yeah.
and it's going to be more efficient, because that is what your subconsciousness, all your systems are very invested in, is
Yeah.
survival.
Yep.
That is common among all biological organisms. They want to
Mhm.
survive. And for survival to occur, we need to find energy efficiency,
Yes.
energy conservation, the
Mhm.
lowest amount of energy for any given task. And so you
Mhm.
have to give it lots of information for the system to be able to find easiness. You can't just say,
Wow.
make it easier. That will do something, but might not
Right.
have that lasting effect. Give it the
Yeah,
information so it can self-organize.
because it wants to be efficient. You just said it. Your body
Mhm.
wants to do the thing. It doesn't
That's
wanna
right.
mess around. I mean, it's just like, "Yes, I wanna do this for you."
Yeah,
Oh,
right,
there's so many questions here. This
right.
is so exciting to me. So here's somewhere I wanna go because I can just hear the inner voices of people, "But I wanna get it right, and I wanna do it, and I
Mhm,
don't wanna like,
mhm.
when will it work if I'm just exploring?" What do you
Yeah,
say to
right.
those people? Because it's
Yeah,
gonna work
yeah.
faster if you do it this way.
Yeah, it can sound like we're just wandering around the woods, just like sort of
Sure,
messing around, and even
sure.
messing around has a wonderful effect.
Yes.
There's I had a session yesterday with a client who was reinterpreting a song, and they wanted to do it in their falsetto. And it was like, oh,
Cool.
that's a cool idea, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the sort of falsetto is a little bit limited, it doesn't tends to
Yeah,
not have a lot of punch or power. And so
yeah.
we started to play with resonance strategies in falsetto, and we started to play with head neck
Ooh.
alignments in falsetto, knowing that when
Ooh.
you lift the chin, it compresses the vocal folds. When you tuck the chin, it tensions the vocal folds. So we can sort
Cool.
of explore possibilities, to boost falsetto, to create a little bit more
Yeah.
than we think is possible there, and
Mhm.
played with placements and imagining placements. So, like, some traditional topics still can live on, but just maybe through a different
Yeah.
perspective. And it was very cool, and they made some very beautiful choices in their falsetto. And then after they did that, I asked, why don't you just one time do it full voice, just to see,
Right?
because everything is benefiting from what we're doing, and we don't know how. And when they did it full
Right.
voice, it was unbelievable how effortless, but also how
Yeah.
clean and clear it was. It was like I could feel and see and hear the truest, purest sound sourced from a really genuine
Wow.
place, maybe for the
Mhm.
first time, by
Wow.
exploring in a non-linear way, exploring
Wow.
something else, and so many other things
Uh-huh.
benefited. So
Uh-huh.
it's not really an answer to your question, but it is an example of how broad things can be when we don't just aim for a goal, but we aim
Yeah.
towards the goal and around the goal, and weave around and see what other possibilities are near the goal, what's in the
Yeah.
neighborhood of the goal. That's
Mhm.
part of how the learning becomes sticky. I give
Mhm.
I give this example, true life example, when I used to live in Michigan and commute to work, that there was one day where there was construction on the road, and I sat through a bunch of lights through construction. It slowed me down. And then the next day I saw the construction and I said, turn right, just turn, get to the
Yeah.
highway in another way. And I
Yes.
did. And then every day I turned at the construction and wove my way to the highway and kept finding
Yep.
different ways to get there. And eventually I wondered, if does this first turn that I'm taking every day actually take me to the big road that takes me to the highway? And I found
Mhm.
a faster path to work than I knew about, that
Wow. Yeah.
became the best path to work. And
Right.
not only did I find the fastest way towards my goal, but
Mhm.
also I'm never going to get lost again. I know the terrain, right? Like, it's big
That's
picture
a wonderful
stuff.
example. Yeah, it's a wonderful example, and when you said, "Oh, it sounds like we're wandering," to me, it sounded like we're 360ing the
Mhm.
goal. And so I'm like,
Mhm.
"That is super efficient, actually." And I've also seen singers, the more they learn about traditional instruction cues, the more they lock up because they're trying to micromanage all the things. So
That's right.
that path isn't faster either. It really
That's
depends
right.
on the singer, but the 360 of that's where the
That's
money
right.
lies. It
And
really
there's
does.
research in and outside of the voice area on nonlinear versus linear approaches to learning. And what both
Mhm.
of them conclude or suggest at the end of the study is that those who learn in a linear way are more
Mhm.
occupied about the perceived right way of doing things, and they don't
Mm.
retain it. And they
Yes.
don't have a level of variability. While folks who are
Mhm.
learning in nonlinear ways are less concerned about the right way, because they have many ways of getting to that place that might
Mhm.
not be the exact right technique that somebody else thinks is the right technique, but is
Exactly.
their way to get there, and
Right.
that it sticks. it sticks.
right?
They have
I can't argue
adaptability, they
with
have
that.
variability, and they retain the learning. And
Right.
to me, I think it's because they're so involved in every part of it. It's not coming
Oh,
from the outside. It's not coming from somebody saying, the way to do that is like this. It's more coming from the play and the experiencing of different
yeah,
possibilities that
yeah.
they own the work.
Mhm. That's so important because
Mhm,
people can get stuck in, "Did I do it right?"
mhm,
And I
mhm,
feel like that is the biggest
mhm.
block in singing. I'm like, "Who
Yep,
cares? Let's just keep
yep.
going. Let's just keep trying things. Did it feel good? Yes. Did you like the
That's
sound?
it.
Yes. Then
That's it.
yes."
That's it. And I am always ushering my clients through a learning curve
Yeah.
to trust themselves and know how to learn
Yes.
on their own. And
Big time.
that's always the conversation. But was that right? Was that right? What do you think about that? They throw it at me and I say,
Mhm.
"Well, tell me about how that felt and was that easier here? Did that lower the
Yeah.
muscular effort around the voice? Did that seem like
Yeah.
it flowed easier?" And when they go, "Yeah, it
Yes.
was easier." I'm like, "Well, that's how you know." And that's how you
Mhm.
know in the audience too, right? Like you're watching
Mhm.
somebody sing and you know if they're working hard or you know if
Mhm.
it's easy for them because you
Yeah.
relax or you clutch your throat. So we need to
Mhm.
turn those tables and ask ourselves like, am I working hard or is this getting easier? Because my audience
Right.
knows.
Yeah, they do. They're like, "I hope you get it."
Right?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
God,
I
make it
hope
there.
it's
Make
gonna come out for you.
I know.
Yes. Oh, so I imagine that safety plays a big role in your clients being able to take risks. So how do you build that safety, trust relationship
Mhm,
with your clients to allow them to take risks? Because I know for sure that some people go, "It's a voice lesson. I must do it right."
mhm.
And so how do you, like, kinda kibosh that piece?
Excuse me. Sorry. Just
That's all good. It's all
getting over
good.
COVID.
I know you said that, and you're a champion. My goodness, thank you for coming here today with getting
Well,
over COVID.
I'm good now. I'm just still a little snotty. Uh, you know, I don't I appreciate that everybody has some sort of feeling
Mhm,
of uncomfortableness owning their experience, and so comforting and easy to let somebody else tell you when it's right or when it's wrong. And I think it's a combination of the fact that just me being me, and I'm just not judgmental of what I hear, and I think my
mhm,
clients recognize that right away. That when I say, "Well, that seemed like it was maybe a little bit more effortful," that I'm not judging them. I'm just helping them
mm,
notice. And so I'm just
mhm.
bringing into the space an awareness of when things I think flowed a little bit easier. And I always offer to them, maybe I'm wrong. Was that easier
Yeah,
for you? You tell me. And so I'm
I
always giving it to
right
them.
back.
You give, and it's so hard for me because I'm so enthusiastic and excited. I love what I
Yeah,
do and I love my clients. And when things get easier, it's hard for me to bite my tongue and not,
mhm.
want to jump around and rejoice and tell them everything I heard and felt. But it's a wonderful thing to stay blank if I can.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and after they sing and things got easier, just stay blank and let them reflect because it tells such a truth.
yes.
I can if I
Yep,
say that seemed easier, they're tempted to say, "Oh, yes, it was." And
and
it
even if it
closes
wasn't.
down.
Yeah.
Right, right. They wanna
Mhm,
please even
mhm.
though I'm trying
Yeah,
so
bless them. They're so
carefully.
sweet. Yes. Yeah.
I know, and it's just the badgering that we received in our
Yeah,
training,
yeah.
that we don't wanna pass on necessarily,
You
and the
got
power
it.
dynamics that are icky. It's a
Uh-huh.
it's a real issue, and I know as a, like, kind of an anxious person who is willing and wanting to please everybody, that it was really hard for me to own my time as a learner. And when I started
Mhm.
teaching, I realized I didn't know anything because I
Right?
never asked questions or I never said to my teachers, I'm not sure I feel that. I like placement, there's nothing in between my
Yeah.
eyes. There's no vibration here when I sing. These aren't things I feel, but this was the language that my teachers were using with me. And I just wanted them to be happy. And then
Yeah.
fast forward a bunch of years of training and performing and then being, trying my hand at teaching. I was like,
Mhm.
how do I not know anything? How do I know
Right?
nothing? How do I have no wisdom to pass on here? And so that really motivated my learning journey to be a
I
better
love that.
teacher, which is, kind of how I organically arrived at this perspective today.
Mm.
that
Mhm.
it was only until I started to learn about the things that were adjacent to voice that I could really look inwards at the voice and understand it better. That it includes learning
True.
theories. It includes, understanding fascia, which is the missing component that makes us whole. It's not in the anatomical
Mhm.
model, but it's changing other movement disciplines, and it's starting to come into the voice
It
conversations. I'm
is,
seeing
it
it
is.
more and more. It's really
Yeah.
exciting. I
Yeah.
presented at the International Congress of Voice Teachers in July on complexity theory and biotensegrity, and how we can make a more integrated pedagogical model with some current
Yes.
theories about the body and learning. And that
Mhm.
was followed by somebody who was sharing myofascial techniques, myofascial release techniques. And I'm like, so cool, so
And
great.
it's so cool, and, like, serendipity is hilarious because I just had someone on, like, 2 weeks ago talking about orofacial myology. So it's like, "What?
Yeah,
Life is
yeah.
fun." Oh,
Life
tell
is
me about
fun.
this learning journey for you because I mean, it feels so vulnerable as a teacher to be like, "Good God, do I know anything? What's happening here?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that learning journey like? Where did you go? You
Mhm,
mentioned some of the terms like fascia and
mhm,
neurodiversity
mhm,
and learning and all this
mhm.
stuff, but what have you found? How did this process look for you, the learning?
Yeah.
And then what have you found are the missing pieces that if we could just put them into voice
Mm.
coaching, things would just right?
Good
Big question.
question. Um, well, I started with the books and I read everything I could
Yeah.
find, and I kept
Mhm.
feeling like there's something missing here. You're telling me that things happen, but not how things happen.
Right?
And so I started to find learning communities, and this is before Facebook, this is before we
Yep.
had such rich
Mm,
opportunities to dialogue with
mm,
colleagues around the
mhm,
clock. And
mhm.
so I started to find learning communities, and I found one that really filled in that blank for this is how things happen. And I
Yeah.
became a master teacher and was one for about 10 years of a voice model that many people know about. And it's very mechanistic and it's very binary. If this, then that. This muscle does
Mm,
that. This cartilage does that. And the sound will
mm,
change like that. And I felt like I just received such a massive amount of clarity, and I felt so powerful as a teacher because somebody could come in classical soprano and wanting to belt, and in an hour they're belting. And they're belting beautifully, and they're belting healthily,
mhm.
and they're belting high. I knew what buttons to push. I knew what strings to pull. But the
Yeah.
next week they couldn't do it again. And I kept realizing like there's holes, there's something missing here. I already
Yep.
taught you that, I'm
Yep.
thinking.
Yep.
But but like I said about that nonlinear principle, until their behavior has changed, they have not learned. And so I'm noticing there's something missing from this
Yeah.
learning process, even though I feel like I'm telling them everything they need to know. And
Right.
I'm helping them feel new things, but they're not integrating into subconscious competence. Right? That's
Mhm.
where we want to
Mhm.
go. I don't have to think
Mhm.
about it. I just have to motivate it, and it happens for me.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I started to get curious about the body, and I started to do yoga, and I started to play with yoga shapes and postures with
Cool.
singing, and would find somebody's power pose, this lunge for you, everything comes
I
through.
love you. Oh, that's
But
so good.
it wasn't sticking, but it wasn't sticking. And I'm
But you're
like,
trying so many things. I just love that part.
I
Continue.
because I'm just a thirsty learner and I want
Me
to
too.
serve my clients as
Yeah.
best as I can. And so
Mhm.
I have to keep spiraling away from voice. And I met a mentor who was a Feldenkrais in process to become a Feldenkrais practitioner, and he showed
Mhm.
me just a different way of looking, a different way of
Mhm.
approaching a voice lesson and structuring it. You don't have to do 30 minutes of exercises and then 30 minutes of rep. This can all be
Mhm.
intertwined, and it can be
Mhm.
so experiential. And it was so mysterious because I'd have a session with them and then I'd leave and I'm like, how did that even happen? I don't know what I did to sing so freely and so fully. That was just like magic.
Mhm.
And so I clung to a couple different mentors for a few years, and this one encouraged me to pursue Feldenkrais training, which I
Yeah.
started in 2017. It's a 4-year training program, and I did about half before I had to, jump ship because I got a different job. The academic calendar wouldn't facilitate me going to Seattle 2 months a year. Like it just didn't work
Oh,
anymore. And
yeah.
I'm glad actually
Yeah.
because number one, my cohort finished in COVID, and I would not have wanted to do this training on Zoom.
Mm-mm,
But
mm-mm.
also, it forced me to figure things out on my own. And I said
Mhm.
to myself when I left that training, I will continue this training at some point in time. But in the meantime, I'm going to see what rabbit holes I can go down to understand what is creating this magic, what is creating
Mm.
this transformative experience where I'm not sure what the heck's going on, but
Right.
there are massive shifts happening
Yes.
beneath the surface.
Sure.
And that somehow led me to biotensegrity, which
Mhm.
is another way of looking at the body that doesn't break it down into parts and pieces and doesn't compare it to a machine, but instead compares it to other living things and the
Cool.
patterns of nature. And Mother
Mhm.
Nature loves a pattern. And so we can
Mhm.
understand ourselves better when we
Mhm.
understand our pets and the plants and slime molds. Like there are so many interesting things we can see and find parallels. I did a whole piece this summer on lessons about teaching that I learned from weeding my garden.
Oh, cool.
And,
Very
and it,
cool.
it was just such an amazing parallel where I just sat down and I was just like picking all these weeds out of the garden and realizing like if I pull hard, it breaks. But if I pull soft, I can hear where the root direction is leading and I can get it from the root with such a soft pull. And I was like, okay, there's something here.
So satisfying.
Right.
Yes.
And then you think you got it all and you show up the next day and there's more there. It's just like a constant process o- of 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 helping biology
Mhm.
evolve.
Mhm.
And one of the sort of metaphors that I created is well, it's not a metaphor, it's just a parallel, is
Mhm.
that biology grows itself if you take care of it in the right way, but you
Mhm.
don't have to do it. You plant the seed, it's the right
Right.
time of year, it's going to get the right sun, and you water
Mm.
it, and you don't see anything, but there are roots growing.
Mhm.
And eventually a little microgreen shows up on the surface, but it stalls there. But you keep taking care of it. And eventually that microgreen, as if like overnight, poof, becomes a much bigger thing. And then it
Mhm.
stalls there. And you keep taking care of it. And then eventually, and eventually it flowers. But it's like so nonlinear. It is not like a
Yeah.
step-by-step
No.
process. Sometimes there are things that are happening that you can't see or sense, but there is always growth. Even if
Nice.
in the moment it doesn't feel like there's
Mm.
always something happening.
Mhm.
And so we can learn a lot by spending a little time in nature and understanding those patterns that surround us that
Yeah.
are the same as the patterns within us. I think it's like 94 or 96% of the DNA that is shared across all animal species.
What?
It's only 4 to 6% that's different. That makes me different than a flea.
Wow.
We are
Wow.
so in common, right?
So in
So
common.
biotensegrity was a huge missing piece, and I remember in my first class, I did a deep dive with embodied shifting paradigms, embodied biotensegrity, Chris Clancy's program, and I remember after my first class saying, "This is like my experience of living. I don't think I've
Mm.
ever experienced or learned anything about the body that resonates so much." And this was off the heels of a 300-hour yoga training
Wow.
with the woman who wrote the book, The Biomechanics of Yoga.
Wow.
I
Wow.
appreciate how she introduced me to fascia, but
Mhm.
but it was interesting holding biomechanics and biotensegrity together. And
Wow.
I'm somebody who's like, oh, I'm sure that there's some, connective tissue there. I'm sure I'll find a way of helping them
Right.
talk to each other. But
Sure.
and I said that to them, and they were like, you probably won't. You probably won't. Because it's a whole different paradigm of understanding and
Yeah.
seeing and perceiving living things. And so
Mhm.
biotensegrity is a huge thing for me. And everything really connects to
Wow.
that, including Feldenkrais, which is the model for experiential learning. That nobody's telling you exactly what to do. They're giving you directions for movements and suggesting
Wow.
qualities of movement, how you can take care of yourself in a movement process.
Wow.
And you feel connections and you feel from a local area to a global movement. But then you
Mhm.
stand up and you're like, well, why do I feel so tall suddenly? I was lying on the ground the whole time. Why do I feel like my arms are swinging so easily? What did I do to make that happen?
Right.
That really is the fountain of youth for
Mm.
comfort, but also for showing a process of learning that is
Mm.
purely internal and really for the person and not
Mhm.
for the teacher.
Mhm.
And so that brings in the nonlinear pedagogy, the nonlinearity of it all. Instead of telling people what to do, give them new experiences around what they want to do and help them recognize how to do the thing they want to
Wow.
do without telling them. The best
Wow.
case scenario is that they say, hey, it's like I just put my tongue somewhere and it came out with a much greater focus. And it's like you sit
Mhm.
back and you're like, I know I wanted to say that the whole time, but I'm so glad you said it first, because it's so much more powerful when they make the discoveries. And
Right? It is.
so it's creating these learning conditions, these environments where somebody will learn and they can't
Yes.
not learn because of
Mhm.
the way that they're taking care of themselves in this movement journey of
Yeah.
voice. So
Wow.
it kept spiraling out, and
Yeah, I see
eventually
that.
led to, really deep diving into fascia, and that's just a crazy world
That is
that changes
crazy.
everything. It is the whole
We
game
are,
changer.
yeah, the spider web of our body, it's
Mhm,
all connected. And of
mhm,
course it is. It's one body, but we don't think we're like, we
right,
can isolate as singers. We don't need to worry about the pain in our knee. That doesn't affect our voice. Oh, oh, but
right,
it does.
right, right.
Wow.
And so it opens up so many avenues for
Wow.
exploration, like grounding. I did that workshop with Chris Kelly a few weeks ago, where
Mhm.
we're both just the whole workshop was about the ground and how we
Wow.
use the ground and how we can create different grounds with our hands, with our
Wow.
tongue,
Wow. Wow.
with our arms, and the ground gives us energy, right? You have to
Mhm.
push down to stand up. You can't do that. You can't try to stand up without pushing anything down. Like you're not going to
That's
go very far.
fantastic. I never thought of it like this.
And so
Yes.
this is where, all the energy up through the soft palate and the crown of the head comes from. So if there are
Right?
blockages in the pathway, there are going to be challenges that a singer experiences. But if you get really
Uh-huh.
clear on how you can connect to the ground, then a
Mhm.
lot of what I think of as low-hanging fruit problems dissipate on their own.
Wow. You mentioned a few words here, the biomechanics. I'm gonna mess this one up. Biotensegrity? Is that
Hmm.
right? Close. Okay,
Biotensegrity. Yeah.
tensegrity. I wrote
Yeah.
it down wrong. Fascia.
Hmm.
There's also somatic, and
Hmm.
I do you deal in trauma, emotional, etc. as well in your work? Does that did that
Not
come
on
into your
purpose.
learning? Okay. Okay. I'm just curious how the emotional component
Yeah.
comes into this work as well. I imagine the body stores a lot of things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
talk to me about that.
We are working with people and their feelings, so that they can
Mhm.
express themselves more fully in performance.
Mhm.
Like no
Mhm.
matter whether you're the most traditional teacher in the world or the least traditional teacher in the world,
Mhm.
we are in a space with somebody and their feelings at all times and
Mhm.
their history as well.
Right.
And so we have to be ready for things to happen, and we have to know how to hold space and be compassionate.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. My sister-in-law is a therapist, and we listen to the same podcasts.
Of course
We
you do.
we could talk for hours and hours and hours because it's the psychology of the person. It's the
Yes.
emotional state of the person, and we have to be therapists as well, while knowing that we're not therapists, and
Mhm.
knowing, sort of how to hold the space but draw the line. It is
Mhm.
not for me to help you with some things, but I will be here for you if some things come up. And I will
Yes.
hold the space and I will hold your virtual hand over Zoom. And
Mhm.
if this means that today the session ends a little bit early, it ends a little bit early. It
Yeah.
usually doesn't.
It
Um,
usually isn't.
like we just allow what's happening to happen with no
Mhm.
judgment, no shame, no blame, no
Mhm.
pressure to close it down, pull yourself
Mm.
together, like none of that.
So good.
A- and
Mhm.
and and I have a population that I'm always working with because of my different perspective, that are folks with very complicated voice disorders and sometimes
Ah,
multiple voice disorders that the speech
wow.
language pathologists and ENTs have all kind of gone, well, you've gotten your sessions and keep playing with the straws and sort of
Oh,
set them on their
goodness.
merry way, but they don't feel like they're capable. And so they find
Mm.
me, and it's a really big gift to me as a teacher to work with folks who have some profound vocal challenges,
Wow.
that sometimes a lesson has nothing to do with using the voice, because that would be the hardest thing for them to do. And so the lesson is about how we balance on the ground, how we balance on the chair, how we free up the body so that there is a systemic flow of energy that is
Mm.
unencumbered, so that maybe their voice will improve. And
Wow.
and just having to hold that space wide open for both of us to not have any expectation that anything is ever
Mm.
going to happen. But often something does. I work with a client who I've been seeing for many years, and I remember at one point she said, "I haven't heard my own speaking voice for 30 years," and
Oh, wow.
after a few months, she came into a session and said, "My husband could hear me from across the kitchen. For 24 hours, my voice came back." This is somebody who's had dozens of vocal fold surgeries.
Oh
Who
my god.
knows? Who knows what kind of scar tissue and elasticity is left? I mean, like, who knows the capacity of these vocal folds to adduct? I
Wow.
don't. I have, and with all the compensation patterns that folks develop when they're struggling and trying hard,
Mhm.
but we hold the space and we create conditions where voice might emerge more easily, and often it does, and it shocks us, and it's
Wow.
beautiful, and it really shows the value of the nonlinearity.
Wow. You said something that really hit me, the no expectations.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because often, I mean, singers come to lessons with expectations all the time. And so
Yeah,
and coaches have expectations and
yeah,
there's expectations everywhere. And I think that's where
yeah,
we muddy the water and we stop the progress.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, biology
Mm.
grows on its own terms.
Right.
So we keep
Right.
nourishing it. And I think of teaching as nourishment, it's vocal nourishment. If
Yes.
you eat clean and green, you sleep better and you have less stress and you digest easier and you eliminate waste easier. Like everything in your life gets easier if you
Mhm.
just have a clean diet. So nourishment for the body goes a very long way for a lot of different systems to optimize
Mhm.
themselves. So what is vocal nourishment? How do we
Hmm.
nourish that system so it takes care of itself, so there's less stress in the
Mhm.
voice, so there's more output for less input? I
Mhm.
mean, it really is, I think, a wonderful thought to chew on for a very, very long time. What kind
Mhm.
of spinach do we need to put into our voice for our voice to emerge the way we want it to? And this
Love
is
this.
something I've learned from Nick Winkelman as well, that when he works with athletes, he thinks about two different kinds of processes. One is optimizing systems, and one is the teaching, the actual
Mm.
how to do it, how the
Mhm.
skills, and he
Mhm.
compares it to tuning a car and learning how to drive.
Mhm.
If you get your oil changed, it doesn't make you a better driver, but it makes it easier to drive.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And where that metaphor ends is when we work on the conditions to optimize our system, which is like our oil change, because we're a
Mhm.
biological system, that moves into skill. It makes our skills
Mm.
improve, and vice versa. When we work our skills and our skills improve, our system optimizes in
Mhm.
part. And so they talk to each other, but we're doing both. And I think often teachers are living in the world of skill, but not in optimization. And that's why I
Mhm.
did a whole summer workshop series on optimizing the breath that was just nutrients for the body, for the breath, so that the breathing system could be more optimal, which
Mhm.
will in turn help the singing system optimize itself.
Yes. Wow, I love this. Oh, so many questions, Jeremy. Okay, one of them is
Yeah.
mindset and,
Uh-huh.
and the next word I have mixed feelings about, self-sabotage. Mindset,
Ooh.
self-sabotage. How do these words come into play in your approach to teaching, and, what can you share with us about that?
Interesting. Um, I don't think about self-sabotage very often. I don't know if that
Cool.
comes up very often. I
Mhm.
have to think about that a little bit more.
It's one of
Um,
those buzzwords right now, which is why I
yeah.
bring it up. Mhm.
And mindset, there's a wonderful podcast, that's not a voice podcast, the
Mhm.
Voxana podcast. Listen to Voxana. Um, it
Yay.
is the Happiness Lab.
Ah,
Happiness Lab podcast.
cool.
And it's all the science of positive psychology and different topics in that
Love
world.
that.
And
Mhm.
there is one episode that I always recommend. I think it's season one, episode 7, called "Don't
Ooh.
Accentuate the Positive," and which is a play on the lyric, right? Accentuate the positive,
Yes.
eliminate the negative. And it is I think an interview with Michael Phelps's swim coach, who does a lot of
Ooh,
motor imagery,
cool. Yeah.
imagining what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And he tells the story about how Michael Phelps got out of the pool in some Olympic game and broke another record, won another gold, but threw a tantrum and said I could have done better, but my goggles filled with water, and so I could have done better. Come
Right.
to find out that Michael Phelps got really bored of just imagining doing what he was going to do, and so he started to imagine things going wrong
Oh,
and running mental simulations for, what if this happens? What'll I do? What if that happens? What'll I do? So he had run a
wow.
mental simulation of his goggles filling up with water so that in the moment he didn't panic. He had a strategy in place. I think of it like spring loading strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that is such a beautiful mindset to think about, that you're prepared for things to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about three areas that we're always trying, or three boxes we're always trying to check,
Mm-hmm.
and often they can be checked by the same things. We're developing technique, we are improving artistry, and we're also creating strategies,
Nice. That
right?
was my next
So,
question.
oh,
Keep
cool.
talking.
Awesome. We're flowing. So the strategy is the as a client says, the lipstick in the pocket, right?
Nice.
Something ready to go just in case. And I know for me, I had to tell myself after a while of cracking on stage, which never happened in my youth, and then started to happen while I was performing professionally. And I
Uh-huh.
had to get over that because now I have this fear that I'm going to crack on stage because I was cracking
Mm.
on stage,
Oh
and
no.
holding that worry was creating a
More
problem that
cracking.
was right. No, I'm just going to crack because don't want to crack anymore. And so I had to change the
Oh,
script. And I started to say, you know what? I don't crack when I hit the note. I crack while I hold the note. So I know I'm going to hit the note. I'm going to hit the
right.
note. Now,
Yeah.
when I hit the note, what do I want to do on the note? And that
Right.
was the game changer where I went strategy. And so I know I'm going to hit the note, but maybe I'm not going to love it, or maybe I'm going to improve it in some way by creating a millimeter of space between my jaw, or bending
Mm-hmm.
my knees, or focusing on the front of my tongue. For
Mm-hmm.
me, those are very powerful, very fast things that I can summon in the moment that can
Mm-hmm.
change the direction of my mind
Mm-hmm.
from, oh shoot, what if it happens, to, no, I'm
Right.
fine. I'm fine. I've got a strategy. I know what I'm doing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
prepared. And all I need to
Mm-hmm.
do is be present.
I
I'm going to
love
hit the
that.
note. What do I want to do after that? And
Right.
so it is a very big part of the work, I think. It
Mm-hmm.
is helping somebody uh, find ease there. And that is another argument for this body-based perspective, because if you teach the body, it's less likely that you're going to divert to the mind when you feel something getting off track. If you
Ooh.
learn through the mind, it's going to be the first place you look for a solution. And
Wow.
that's not behavior. That's intellect. And singing is behavior.
Oh my God. I'm just gonna replay you saying that over and over in my life because whoa, huge, huge nugget.
Why? Tell me how that resonated.
I
I'm
just
going to
think
interview you
that
now.
sassy. I love it. I just think that a lot of this work is about thinking and thinking and thinking. It's you have to intellectualize the concept and then you'll be able to get it. And I just think that ease is how I teach. So I love that. But ease doesn't come through thinking about trying
Mhm,
to maneuver and micromanage. That is not ease to me.
mhm,
So this like teaching the body and just the trust game, especially for mind dominant folks like myself.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I live up here. I'm like a floating head. So it's been a journey getting down and allowing. That just really blew my mind. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's true. And like, can we
Mhm.
create a world where nobody ever gets off stage and says, "Oh, I was so in my head," right? Like, well, why were you there? Why did you go there in the first place?
Why? Oh, presence. Yes. Yes. We all just bless our hearts. We all just want to do our best and
That's
we're
right. That's
we're
right.
working too hard to get to the best, I think. We're working harder than we need to.
And it's funny, I
Yeah.
just wrote a piece that I sent to my email list today about best practices. I ask Facebook
Mm,
sometimes questions in voice teacher talk, like what needs a
mm,
re-examining in vocal pedagogy? What could we could have a
mm.
do-over? And so many thoughts came into this thread that just opened
Wow.
my mind up so much that I started to think about best practice. And I'm like, what even is that? And I asked Google
Mhm.
AI, and one of the bullet points was continual evolution. I'm like, I think we're
Ooh,
missing that. I don't
we're
know if our
missing that.
best practices is getting a facelift regularly. I think we're
Yeah.
stuck in the past with what best practice looks like because it's comfortable to do what we're familiar with,
Mhm. Mhm.
and in, trying something new is a little bit scary.
Yes.
And this is really, what I teach teachers and voice nerds in body-based voice ped. I have a community of voice teachers and
Of
passionate
course you do.
vocalists.
I love
But
this.
it's been such a joy
Yeah.
to show others this experiential approach, and through doing very simple, everything is very simple that we do.
Mhm.
Comments in the chat are varied. Like, the same thing is helping somebody
Mhm.
find a smoother registered transition. I found my higher notes were easier, felt more focused, it felt more forward in my mouth, it felt more
Mhm.
this, it felt less this, it was less, like the same things are speaking to folks in their own unique way, really showing the breadth of possibility of one strategy or one idea, that
Mhm.
it's just an expansive world when we think about experience and how we can create shifting experiences for a vocalist so that they can feel for themselves what's going on. And I
Mm.
call it anatomy from the inside up. Because what happens is they start to glean important things. They start to say, "Oh, I noticed that my spine is lengthening here. How interesting." And
Wow.
and they start to collect information consciously, and of course subconsciously there's so much more going on, but
Mhm.
consciously they start to notice the key features of what they're doing, and those can become strategies. But they learn it, they feel it. It's what's inside of them, and it's unique for everybody.
Oh, I love this because they don't need to go and wait till their next session to go, "Jeremy, am I doing it right?" Like,
Mhm,
they're s gonna
mhm,
start to know and understand and
mhm.
trust themselves,
Yep,
and that level of trust allows for more
yep,
risk taking.
yep,
So
yep,
good.
yep. It's
So
very
good.
simple. It's very simple
Very
to
simple.
teach a singer what to look for to know if they're on
Mm.
the right path or the wrong path in
Mhm.
their own practice. Are you
Mhm.
getting tired in your voice, or does it feel like possibilities are expanding?
Right.
That's it.
Right. Right, and not to override that because you
Mm.
want to
Mhm.
please somebody teacher, basically.
Uh-huh.
Not to override that, right?
Or
Mhm.
override it for your own self and push
Yeah,
past where your body says, "No, that's really not the best way about it,"
exactly.
but you're saying, "I gotta belt that note though." And
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
ignoring the signals that your body gives you, and your body
exactly.
is like the best feedback loop for this process. It
It's so
is so
good.
simple, which is one of the reasons why I really, I've spent a lot of time to understand body, and way less time to dig into brain and understand the
Mhm.
neurological aspects, because that seems like such a secret language that's hidden from our experience. But the
Yes.
body is the simplest feedback loop. Easier or harder, right? Like, that
Right,
made it
right.
simpler, that made it effortless, or that made me
Simple.
tired.
Mm.
So
I wanna
simple.
go there with the cues from the body because I think this is a good thing to really hone in on. How does one know when it's a no from the body
Mm.
or a no from the fear mind? So, for an
Ah,
example, when they're playing around and they're taking risks and I'm supposed to build this, but
uh-huh,
there's a no. How would you
mhm.
distinguish that for them as where it's coming from?
Where it's coming from. Like
Yeah.
like like their
So,
like
like,
their
if it's a
fear?
no from the body, like, "Oh, no, that's not gonna work that way," or,
Mhm.
"I don't wanna be belting that note," versus the fear mind going, "Oh, I can't," or, "Oh, I'm scared,"
Right.
or how do we distinguish the messages from the body versus the message from the mind?
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting question. I'm not sure I can get right into that right away, so I'm gonna start
Yeah,
somewhere.
go,
Let's see where
go,
we
it's a
go.
big one, and we've got, like, 4 minutes, and I'm like, "Here's the big life question for you.
No, it's
Go."
good to think about. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, it is a relationship. And
Yes.
I really think that this is the relationship that we wanna restore balance into, because we've
Mhm.
spent so long revering the way we learn with the mind, that we bring mind into matter, and the
Mhm.
matter doesn't matter anymore. And
Mhm.
and we want the matter to speak to the mind as well, and so we wanna
Yeah.
create a relationship that's flowing there,
Nice.
because what winds up happening is if somebody's working too hard, their attentional resources reduce. And
Mm.
and so they're unable to pay attention, they're unable to be mindful, and my definition of mindfulness is being aware of the choices you're making as you're making them.
Nice.
And
Mhm.
and so if you're working hard, you'll see it in their eyes, first of all. The eyes are a tell for the state of the nervous system. And so watch what they're doing, watch how they're using their body. I had a session with a new client last week who was like so cool as a cucumber, and then the 3 high notes came and everything changed.
Yes.
Right? You know,
Yes.
it's like, okay, and
Yes.
that is a
Oh,
feedback loop. And it's like,
yeah.
you know, do that phrase again and just notice what's happening in your fill in the blank, in your
Yep.
on your nose and your face and your shoulders, wherever. You know, notice
Mhm.
what's happening in that phrase. And
Mhm.
it might be very hard for them if they're working too hard to even remember that in the moment.
Right? Exactly.
And so that right there is the lesson. Right? So what
Mm.
do? We scale it down. And that is a part of my perspective is how do we scale down from full on to a level, a size, a speed where we can tend to our experience. And so that might mean
Mhm.
singing it quietly. That might mean lip syncing it. That might mean imagining it. That might mean lowering the key. That might mean flipping into falsetto for a moment and let's organize the resonance so that you
Mhm.
have a feeling of how you can sort of target and focus your sound, even in
Mhm.
falsetto, that you can
Mhm.
then transfer in to a fuller
Mm.
voiced feeling. And
Mhm.
I'm sitting here thinking it's probably going to happen anyway, because if we organize the resonance and the falsetto, the
Mhm.
full voice is learning from that, and they'll
Yes.
actually find a less effortful, less muscular approach to that for that nonlinear play of going into falsetto, which is like not where anybody wants to really go,
No.
except for
No.
that other client I was talking about,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
me. I love falsetto work, um, but I think that is the way I approach that question is how do
Mhm.
we keep mind and body working together at all times? Because ultimately we want them to be in balance. They haven't been in
Mhm.
balance, and we can nurture that. And when they're more in balance, everything
Love that.
gets easier
Love
because
that.
you're using more of your resources.
I imagine that's where artistry lives, is that intersection of the balance. That's where your full artistry comes out.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's magic, right? Like when we are truly in the moment, it's almost as if it comes through us instead of from us. And
Right?
sometimes we are out of body,
Yeah.
and we are actually, you know, stepping outside of ourselves, watching ourselves in action, which I talk about
It's
this, but I
great.
don't explore it enough. But that's a skill
Mhm.
that we have. That's just our
Mhm.
exteroception, you know, our sense
Wow.
of our outer space. I can, on a
Oh.
dime, decide I'm going to step out of my body and watch myself from the side, just like I do when I'm in my
Yeah.
best moments. Why don't
Yeah.
I practice that?
Oh, then it won't freak us out so much when it happens. They're like, "Wait, what's happening? Am I checking out?" And then it's gone. The minute you're like, "Wait,
Mm.
wait, there it is." Gone.
Right. And if in the
What do we
best
do
moments
there?
I am kind of stepping outside of myself and I can do that on demand, well,
Yes.
why don't I practice that? What will that bring?
Why not? This is
Right.
the whole motto of today's show is like, why not try it? Why not do it? Why not let go? Why not? Just explore.
And that includes the wrong things. That includes
Yeah.
practicing wrong. That includes making the
Mhm.
wrong noise. That includes doing something that feels terrible here, right?
Mhm.
Because that is how the system learns where to go and where not to go.
Mhm.
You need to practice everything because everything has a value towards the
Mm.
outcome that is
Mhm.
efficient and emergent, not coming from here, but coming through here.
Ooh.
So it's full permission to try it out, you know, even if it
Yes.
feels terrible here and it's like, "Oh, I gotta cough that out." All right, let's not be afraid of the body coughs, you know, and actually, you know, like, I had a little conversation with somebody in that thread on Facebook about this exact thing, where in reality there's this fundamental law about the body. Davis's law is what it's called, where the more stress you bring into a tissue, the more resilient that tissue becomes. Now, of
Ooh.
course, we can overdo
Yeah.
that, and the tissues can be worn down, and there can be shearing and wear and
Mhm.
tear. But let's not be afraid of the natural processes of the body,
Right?
because it actually grows from them.
Ah.
So let's not be afraid of coughing or clearing our throat, because that makes the tissues more
I can
resilient.
feel singers
Um,
everywhere relaxing.
or getting mad at
Or
me.
getting mad. "What?" But they want it. They're like,
I know.
"Okay, okay." Awesome.
But we have to let our body be our body and let our body do what it
Right?
does. And so to practice things that feel bad,
Mhm.
give important information about where not to go next time,
Right.
consciously and
So
subconsciously.
good. Jeremy, where can people find more about you and your work?
I have a ton of stuff out on Instagram, and that's where, you know, stuff there's most action. I'm
Sure.
also on TikTok and Facebook. You can find me Body Based Voice with J Moss on social media, also bodybasedvoice.com. And if you are interested in learning more about this and experiencing this weekly, this is what, Body Based Voice PED is all about. And there are a few spots open for the winter segment that starts January 5th. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. You can find me very easily on Facebook and on my
Well, and you're
website.
so easy to talk to. I will just vouch for you. You're so easy. The conversation
Aw.
just flows with you. So thank you for being on the show today. I so appreciate it. And I'm encouraging everybody to check out Jeremy and his